Hello, my name is Joy Ashby Cornthwaite, and I will be your host for this episode of the live stream show, MyDiabetesHQ Live. To start the new year, we began with 3 champions and advocates who spoke to the challenges of shaping life goals instead of New Year resolutions. And last week, we were joined by diabetes education and care specialists who plan to continue to listen and hear their patients living with diabetes and how listening informs the way that they care. Today's episode is coming up right now. You don't want to miss this. Before we begin, a gentle reminder, the content shared during the MyDiabetesHQ Live broadcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical condition. This weekly broadcast is developed by and produced by Cities Changing Diabetes volunteers in Houston and Philadelphia. Our 2 cities are the U.S. members of a global initiative of 36 cities working to improve diabetes prevention, care, and management all around the world. You can learn more about Cities Changing Diabetes by going to citieschangingdiabetes.org, .com. The purpose of MyDiabetesHQ Live is to help people living with diabetes and their support teams. And today, we're talking about the Live Diabetes experience. So let's welcome our returning panelists. Reva Verma, CEO of Reneka App Builders. Good morning,
Hello.
Reva.
Good morning.
Good morning. And Serena Valentine, CEO of Core Initiatives and Diabetes Peer Support Coordinator here in Houston.
Good morning.
Excellent. So to our viewers, we will be talking about our January SMART Goal series, and specifically last week's that was titled Diabetes Support Goals. There we go. So these and all of our episodes that are linked to this series are available for viewing on our YouTube channel. Watch, like, and subscribe, and then join the conversation. Reva and Serena, Tiara Smith said last week, never be afraid to use your voice. You can be your strongest advocate and your own best diabetes buddy. She reminded us all to find support from others and that there are many people who want to see us win. So let's do that today. Let's help our viewers and their teams discover more strategies for success, beginning with your observations from last week's show with educators and care specialists, and moving into sharing a valuable resource that both of you have found helpful in your journey towards owning your goals and finding support. So Serena, this was your first pick. And since it's me, you picked me. I'll spare us from talking about myself in the third person and let you read what I said.
Okay. Hostess, as I like to call her. She said that partnership takes listening, being sensitive, and perhaps being a bit vulnerable ourselves as CDCES, saying to our patients, I don't have all the answers. I need to know what you know, what you want to know, and what you need to know so that I can educate, motivate, and advocate you. Okay, so this was my pick because it's so important for the person who is on the healthcare team to actually care about what the patient needs, what the patient wants, and it's important that the patient communicates that back to the professional, because the professional, all they can do is look at a chart. You know, the charts don't tell you your daily routines. The charts don't tell you what you eat on a day-to-day basis. The chart doesn't tell you if you have a hiccup or a monkey wrench thrown in the day. You know, that's something that you got to speak to your healthcare providers about. So I like that one.
And that's what I was talking about. You know, we don't have the answers. As your clinicians, we're looking to you to guide us so that we can sort of imbue the education and the knowledge that we have on top of who you are as a person. And I know that that's something very important to both of you. And I know especially to you, Reva.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, you and I had a conversation the other day about how, doctors are there to facilitate, but they, like Serena touched on, they don't know the backstory. And if it's okay with you, I kind of want to talk about the story you shared about your dad. So, Joy's dad, before CGMs were linked to pumps, he would sit there and use graph paper to graph his blood sugars, and he himself would tie certain events happening in his day-to-day life to his blood sugars. So when he was in the hospital and the nurse came in and said, the doctor ordered 5 units for your blood sugar, he was like, I can't do the Caribbean accent, but I'm going to try. He's like, no, I only need 1. If you are going to put that, I'm going to need sugar in my veins. So it's like the patients themselves know what works for themselves and their bodies. So sure enough, whenever the nurse came back in after talking to the doctor, she gave 1 unit and his blood sugar went to being perfect. So it just goes to show that, we experience diabetes 24/7. Your doctor is with you for maybe 30 minutes. They don't know the stressors of your day-to-day life, what you're eating, when you're exercising, when you take medication, when you're like super stressed out or you're caught off guard. We're not in control of it. It's not a strict formula, right? That it's not a one size fits all like how Serena and Joy have touched on. So I just wanted to bring that to light as well because I thought that was such a powerful message that Joy shared with me the other day, and I really wanted to share it on this show because if you know yourself, speak up. If you know something works for you and doesn't work for you, speak up because care can only get better when you are your own advocate.
Yeah. And that was a pivotal moment for me, as someone who was learning and choosing a career in diabetes. It spoke volumes to me about just how important it is because sometimes the calculations are just that. They're calculations without a human. And so I like that stuck with you, Reva.
Well, thank you for sharing that with me.
Of course.
I did want to talk about Cheryl's take on why connection matters. So Cheryl said that trust and connection matters. She has a connection with her patient, so when I look at the glucose log, I can make assumptions, but then when I talk to the patient, it's always something different. There's a story behind the numbers, and it may not be what Cheryl thought. So I feel like this also ties into the story about your dad, and I can personally relate. If I'm going through a stressful work situation or if I have a test coming up for school, I definitely feel like my blood sugar spikes because I have all this adrenaline dumping into my body. Sorry, my dog. But trust and connection are extremely important because if you feel like you can trust your body, you can trust your doctor, you can trust the decisions you're making, to be flexible with, like Serena said, the monkey wrenches and hiccups thrown your way. It's really important to be able to adjust to those situations.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't. When it comes to the doctor-patient relationship thing, I guess, I don't know. I might be one of them anomalies because I'm like, I don't laugh because I laugh at myself. But I'll come in when the doctor comes in. I'm like, okay, look, let me tell you what happened this week, and but to a certain extent, like that relationship has to be built up to where I feel like I can talk to you, talk to you about that. When the doctor comes and say, how are you doing? And then you breathe a sigh of relief, like, oh, let me tell you what happened this week, and my doctor, she'll be like, okay, then that's why you had this going on and that going on. And she'll be like, you gotta learn how to tone it down. It's Valentine. You can't be stressed and you need to get sleep. That my thing is not getting enough sleep. But that's very important, because if the doctor doesn't know, like for example, that I don't get enough sleep, they're gonna always assume that I'm just out there messing up, So
Serena, I have a question. When you go
Mhm.
into doctor's appointments, do you feel comfortable just unloading to them, or does it take you a few minutes, or has it taken you a few appointments to get to that level in order to be like, let me tell you what's going on?
I'm one of those people who will share and sometimes overshare. But I know consciously that, okay, look, if we're going to work together, I got to give you my information, because I don't want you messing up with me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to feel like I'm just messing up with you. So we got to level the playing field here. I'm going to give you my information and help me out. Just help me with it here. Everything's on the table. Tell me what I need to do. Help me out. So I'm just kind of one of those people that just share. I'm a sharing
Yeah.
type.
Yeah.
I think I myself am a little more reserved. Like if it's my first time meeting a doctor, I'm not right off the bat like, let me tell you everything that's going on, and this is why my blood sugars are the way they are. I think it takes a minute to be, or to get to that point where I'm like, does this person have the capability of understanding my point of view and the things I'm experiencing, to integrate that into my care? So I want to take a page out of your book and just overshare, but I just I understand when people are also like, I don't know, I'm just there to get it like a check mark for the year.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, because
Well,
I know definitely right after my diagnosis, I was reserved about everything. I didn't
Right.
share it at all, because
Yeah.
I first of all I didn't want to accept that I had diabetes, and I didn't know anything about diabetes. So I was like, well, I just want to get through this doctor's appointment because I really don't want to be here. But
Yeah.
in terms of, it took me years to get to the point where I just share now, because now I'm like, I don't have time for any other mistakes to happen. I've been really sick before and lost my sight, and I don't have time to, but at first it did take me a long time to, actually be like, okay, I'm going to share my other information with the doctor. So I need to
so
interrupt.
no. So something that I want to ask you both, and listening to what you're saying right now, is, can you remember some of your first experiences? Did someone ask you how you were at all? Or do you think that that's something that you would shy away from still if somebody were to ask you? Because last week, the educators discussed opening an open-ended conversation. How are you? Tell me about what's going on in your life right now that is impacting your diabetes.
So I was diagnosed when I was 11. I'm 29 now. So my appointments look very different. But if you're asking about early on, I felt like I wasn't included in my care. So when I was a young child going to my appointments, I almost felt shamed going into my appointments, because it's almost like an adult being like, you're not doing this right. You need to do better. And I would dread going to those appointments. I would like drag my feet, walk slow through the halls, try to do everything to make sure we were late for the appointment. And the doctors never asked me personally how I felt or what was going on in my life that affected my blood sugars. They would always talk to my parents and have my parents' perspective, not the patient's perspective. Now, obviously, as I've gotten older, that's evolved because I take care of my appointments myself and I have my relationships with my doctors. And I feel more comfortable now speaking about what's going on and how things are affecting my day-to-day blood sugars. But I do think if that type of care was integrated at a younger age where you're asking the adolescent, how do you feel about this? Is this something you want to do? Can we make things a little bit easier? What would be your ideal day? That would be a lot more of a supportive environment, in my opinion, to kind of bring that person along.
Yeah, and I think that healthcare has changed. I think that that behavioral change goals and thinking about, interpersonal relationships with your own patients has been something that's being taught now. And just to share a little bit, my daughter had an appointment this week, and we went a couple of weeks ago to meet the doctor initially, and then she had an appointment. And what struck me as a parent was that the physician talked directly to her. And I remember thinking in my mind, I like this person. And she asked her questions and she listened to her responses. And I could tell that she was learning things about her to help with her treatment plan, because that's the clinician in me. But I also could see, that my daughter really was initially a little bit afraid. But then she talks to the doctor, she calls her by name now, and they've only had a couple of visits. And I think that was a massive turning point for her, is just having the physician talk directly to her, even though she's a kid. So
that's
I think
really great to hear. I'm glad things have evolved and progressed. I think that's so important for children to feel supported and feel like they have a say in their care. I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah, that's great. So to summarize what we've been saying, we want people to learn to, and even, just try it out, speaking up for yourself, listening, communicating your needs so that you can help build trust, because trust goes both ways, right? Your clinician will be able to trust that when you need things and when something's off, and that you will communicate that back to them, and you'll be able to trust that they're listening, which is great. So I love the layering that we're doing. So, but why is all of this important? So thinking back to your first episode on our goal series, where Serena talked about inviting the person with diabetes to sit at the head of the table for their diabetes care planning. One of the clinicians last week chose that as as one of her motivators, and this is what she said. So she said that diabetes care isn't concrete. So keeping in mind that, trust building is important, communication is important, because things change. She said that it's a dynamic disease. It's ever changing because life changes. So you go through different phases. You're not in the same headspace every day or over your whole life. She suggests that CDCESs can say, I'm hearing you say that your life has changed in the past month or over the past few weeks. Let's talk about what we could do to make things a little bit easier for you while still making sure you're taking care of yourself. So Serena, how did that make you feel, knowing that, knowing what you know about the changing journey?
Yes, and it is very important for the professional to get to know what is going on with the patient to the point where even the patient realizes, oh, this person is actually listening. That actually repeating back to the patient what the patient said is like, okay, so you're listening, and then you also want me to let you know if there's something that is there something I missed, this is what you said, right? So it's reiterating that communication back and forth. It's like kind of inviting, come on, talk to me. So that's really good because I haven't had a lot of experience with providers that would, repeat back to you what you said. It's kind of like, well, as long as you heard what I said, it's fine. Just did you hear what I said about when to take your medicine and your medicine's at the pharmacy? Did you hear about that? You know when the next time you're supposed to come in, the next time you're supposed to get labs. It's like, okay, I heard that, but did you hear me? Did you hear my concerns? So yeah, that's great.
I think it also brings a sense of self-awareness because as you're talking and as someone speaks back to you, you may start to pick up on patterns that you didn't necessarily realize. So I think it builds trust. Also, it brings self-awareness. Two really important things.
Yeah, and it also clarifies things too,
Yeah.
Reva. So in terms of creating self-awareness, like if you hear what you're saying through someone else's
Right.
voice, like through them repeating it back to you, you're like, wait, that wasn't exactly what I said. What I meant was this instead. And so I think those bring up really important moments. And when you recognize and acknowledge another person's experience, it lets them know that you care about them and that you trust them. And they should trust you back. It's part of friendship building, to listen to someone and to hear them and then to be invested in what they're saying to you. Yeah. So when we talked about, creating flexibility, creating that sort of back and forth, I know that it's not a really structured dynamic between a clinician and a patient. It's a necessary dynamic, but it's not very structured. And both of you, I think, have maybe a little bit different takes on what structure is and how that makes you feel. So like maybe just tell me, both of you, more structure do you feel that you need, or do you need less structure?
I personally need more structure. If I have more structure and I know what I'm supposed to do and I have milestones to meet, I feel like I'm biting off chunks at a time instead of a whole marathon. And I feel like I can set many goals within that for me to achieve. So structure definitely gives me less anxiety. It makes me know what my deliverables are. It makes it easier for me to adjust in the short term to meet the long term. So for me, I am very much of a ABC type person.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Serena?
I am the type of person, I don't know, I'm kind of like in the middle. I need balance, I'll put it that way, because if I really want to do something, I'll focus on that end goal and not really pay attention. Like, even though I tell my participants in peer support, we're celebrating every win, like I'm talking to myself because sometimes I don't do that. I don't take the time to do that. And I don't think they're as significant as the end goal, which is, we know, is not accurate. So when it says you can't see the forest for the trees, mine is backwards. I can't see the trees for the forest. I'm looking at the forest. I don't see trees because I'm looking at the forest, So I I need both. I need the structure, but then I need the flexibility as well so that I can chill. I hear it all the time. Serena, just chill. You're going too hard. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, no, but you don't understand. I got to get there, you know? So I need balance.
Yeah. So let me throw something out at both of you, a kind of a concept, and see, theoretically, is it something that is more theoretical than actually functional? Thinking about what it means to be given the power to choose. Okay. So, and then allowing that power to choose to decide, today I'm more structured, tomorrow I'm more flexible, or this morning I'm more flexible, tomorrow I'm more structured. So what I mean to say is that getting information that then lets you choose, I want A over B right now, but then tomorrow you can choose B over A, and that's okay. Is that something that you've ever thought about? Like, is it because you have the power to choose, the power that you're in the driver's seat? Is that why you feel more comfortable, less anxious? Is that the space that you feel safer in, whether or not it's flexible or structured?
Well, I know that's the story of my life. Like today, I may feel like going hard and getting everything done. Tomorrow, I might be like, you know what? I ain't doing that today. So me having that ability to choose it, to me, it's empowering because it's like I can choose what I want to do, and if I don't want to do it, it's no biggie. But as long as I don't go too far off my path, then I'm okay.
Yeah,
So
that's what I was gonna say. As I think the flexibility and being able to choose is super important, and it gives you balance. But it's all about how far is too far and how much is too much.
Yeah.
yes.
If you go off one way and then you're just like, I don't need to do it. It's okay. One more day won't hurt me. Oh well. Like that's dangerous.
Yeah, you wanna bring it back. I think
Yeah.
so. Christian, one of our viewers, Christian, just said having structure is a great way to start, then allowing some flexibility as time goes on, and then having, I would add, thank you, Christian, for your amazing insights. Like, we are just fans of you, our viewer. He always has the best things to say. So I think having flexibility and then taking it a little bit further and recognizing self-awareness when that flexibility has become just off track, right? When you can pull yourself back in, I think is really super important and I think that's part of the self-awareness. Is this flexibility, or is this choosing not to do what's best for me?
Yeah, like people who don't even have diabetes experience this every day and can relate to it. Like, at the beginning of the year, you're like, oh, I want to eat super healthy and I want to be the fittest I've ever been. And then a weekend, you're like, meh, I'll eat that ice cream. I don't need to work out today. I can skip my walk. And then before you know it, you're back to eating crap all day long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I do practice that, kind of, one of my doctors calls it snuggle slap snuggle. So we practice kind of like, this has to be done, and then, but what you want, and then this has to be done, but what do you want? And then we can come to a space, because I think one of the things that happens that some people don't recognize or realize is that when you're forced into a decision, even if it was a decision you would have made on your own, you don't like it because you were forced into it by somebody else. You feel like you did not have the power to choose.
Yeah.
So I know I keep coming back to motherhood, but motherhood teaches you lots of things. Okay. Future Reva. And tips and tricks for the future. But one of the things that I learned was we don't ask the kids to, they're pretty great. They love vegetables, they love fruit. But in the beginning, we never started with, you must eat this. Like, it was always an option. So I knew in my mind that they were eating a vegetable today.
Yeah.
They were going to have one, right? But they could choose whichever one they wanted. And that freedom made it so easy, because it was like, mommy wants to give me the power. It was no longer about like, I'm not going to eat vegetables. It was like, I'm going to eat the one I want to eat. and so I think sometimes, even as adults, you might think, Miss Butler alluded to it during the first episode of our series. And she said, I didn't tell her how many times she was going to check her blood glucose values. I just told her to check them, so that she can get some information and data. And if I had told her to check them twice religiously, like, you must do it, I don't think she would have checked any. And she said that she wasn't going to. And when she came back, like, she had data for days. Like, she had like 5, 6, 7 checks a day, and they were all related to something, and she could see what was happening and why they were happening. And I was like, oh, wow. So I see you've been checking your blood glucose. She's like, I wanted to. So like, within the structure of blood glucose monitoring was her flexibility to choose. Yeah,
that's a powerful message.
Thanks, Reva. You're always teaching me something. Making me feel good. I need you in my life daily.
I feel the same about you.
So whichever you choose, I think, is going to address your total wellness, especially your mental health and wellness and your anxiety and sort of the stress, because it allows you to have ownership of things. So what are both of your tips, and can you share them about dealing with stressors or anxiety, and what works for you? And maybe, it could be something that someone else could try, one of our viewers watching now.
So if I'm super stressed, we call them coping skills, like you pull something out of your coping box. So 2 that I typically go to is I start coloring. I have a coloring book, and it helps me just kind of, get my stress out onto the paper. Second coping skill that I use is deep breathing / meditation, but it's kind of like a visually guided meditation. So the way that works is I take 5 deep breaths, I close my eyes, I try to like center myself in a chair and let my body kind of soak into the chair. Then I either visualize a beach or a mountain, and I start visualizing sounds, smells, feelings, and just kind of take that serene vicinity in. So I try to do that for like 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a long time. It's really hard to like stay focused on, that specific location, but as long as I can. And then I typically feel my heart rate has gone down. I feel more like logical about the steps I need to take in order to conquer something. So those 2 things typically help me.
Yeah, those are great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I use prayer and meditation. That helps me a lot to just sit and I pray and I meditate. Meditation usually involves not saying a word. I can sit and look at a wall without a thought and that relaxes me. It's weird, but it happens. I also have my very small circle that I talk their ears off. Some people get around me and like, you don't really talk much. It's like, not, it says not the ones who are in my circle. They're like, oh my gosh, okay, just go ahead, get it out, and then so we can be done with this. You know, my ears coming off, but you know, they listen. They listen. Particularly my brothers, my lifetime bestie, my mom, and my other bestie. So I talk their ears off when I'm upset and stressed out about things, and then when I'm done, I feel the weight is lifted. So that's how I deal with my stress. If I can't talk to anyone at the time, I just kind of try to deal with it myself and do other things because I don't have a lot of spare time with my child. My child even gets the business, y'all. He just be looking at me like, okay, mom, I don't understand what you mean. I don't get why you're upset about it, but okay. And when I'm done, he runs away. Like, I feel better. But yeah, that's how I deal with my stress.
Yeah, as those are some really great tips, guys, and I know that perhaps our viewers out there have some tips that they'd like to share as well. But it sounds like both of you actually use your other physical senses to bring sort of everything back into harmony, which is really nice. So using spirituality, using your sense of sight, hearing, all of those things. So I think, you know, there's something to be said, and I can't wait for an episode about coping strategies that we can, you know, talk to a health professional. So if you're a health professional out there who works with patients living with diabetes who would like to share with us some coping and wellness strategies, please let us know. Just contact us and leave us a message, and we'll come find you and you'll be on our show. Shout out.
Because you'll be on here forever. No.
Don't tell them yet. Shh.
Oh, no.
All right. So the two of you, I always learn so many really amazing things when I talk to the two of you that I can help shape and develop care for other people that I'm working with, other patients, other people who are living with diabetes. And there's a resource that the two of you found recently and have been really sort of diving into and seeing, and it's spoken to you guys in volume. So I want to share that here today. So, oops, sorry. There we go. So we've got from Adam Brown, author of Bright Spots and Landmines. He created 42 factors that affect blood glucose. And so if you look at that, they've been moved into categories of food, biological factors, medications, environmental, and behavioral and decisions. And you can find more about this and the entire list and explanation at diatribe.org. This is their resource. And also you can download or buy Adam Brown's book, and it is really amazing. So dig in. If you're living with diabetes, if you're helping someone, if you're supporting someone with diabetes, I think it's a really powerful read. So what Reva and Serena did today, because they're awesome, is they chose a couple of factors, and they're going to tell us a little bit about how those factors played in their journey. So we'll begin with Reva's picks. So Reva picked from the biological factors category, increase your blood glucose, and then medication. From the medication factors list, she chose steroid administration. So Reva, can you tell us a little bit about why you chose these?
Yeah. So I personally experienced blood sugar issues with both. So the first one I chose was stress and illness. So I have a gross story kind of. So one time I picked a hangnail off of my finger and it got infected. And then, because it was infected, I had like a low-grade fever and my finger was hot. So we had to put topical the topical cream. It didn't work, so then I had to start taking antibiotics, and my blood sugar skyrocketed like through the roof. It was super. It didn't make sense at first because I was like, why is my blood sugar high now? But it was because I had an infection in my body, and then on top of that, we were taking antibiotics, which obviously messes with your system. So the solution to that I have like figured out is put like a higher temp basil whenever you're taking different antibiotics that you may not be accustomed to. You could ask your doctor too, like I guess if it has sugar content in it, or like we were talking about on that previous slide, steroids, like if you have to take a steroid for an infection, or when I had knee surgery, I had to get steroid injections into my knee. Those spike your blood sugar as well. So just, if you know that beforehand or are aware of it, you can kind of premeditate what you're going to do in order to compensate for that spike in your blood sugar.
Mm-hmm. And, along the same vein, if someone's, if perhaps you're not on an insulin pump, but you're taking basal bolus therapy, it may be a conversation to have about adjusting your basal or your background insulin in order to manage the elevations that will happen outside of any of the other factors, including like food and exercise and all of those things, because of the biological factor of illness and the medication factor of the steroid medication. So it's really a great resource to have in your back pocket to read over, to see if it kind of connects with something that you've been experiencing. And once again, don't forget, you can download and donate to diatribe.org at the site for bright spots and landmines. So thank you, Reva, for sharing that. No, I don't think it's gross at all. I think it is just, we're talking medicine and health here. So any of, Serena, do you want to speak to either of those or just dive into yours?
No, I know that stress thing. And like I said before, because I used to hold everything in. And so that's why I've become such I overshare, because when I would hold everything in, I would get stressed, and you may not think you're stressed, but when I would check my blood sugar, that's how I would know, because I know I haven't eaten anything out of whack. I know I'm still exercising, but my blood sugars are still elevated. I'm stressed, so stress has a very big impact on blood sugar, and especially the illnesses, like when Reva was talking about the infection, any infection in the body. That's how I know that something else is going on too, is like, okay, I feel bad, something doesn't feel right, and my blood sugar is elevated. Okay, I need to see what's going on if I can't pinpoint it myself. So yeah.
And within the text, you'll find explanations of it. So they'll talk about, the text talks about the factor, the typical effect on blood glucose. So it doesn't mean every single person will experience it this way, but typically, and then comments on it. And so stress and illness here we can see causes the body to release adrenaline, glucagon, growth hormone, cortisol. There is a physiological reason that more glucose is released from the liver, and the body can become less sensitive to insulin, and then you start seeing elevations. And I think it's really an important space for someone to know that it isn't your fault, okay? Because first we have to identify the factors that are causing it. And then we can address the factors, because the ultimate plan and goal is to keep you your healthiest and to impact your health in the most positive way possible. And so I think that he brings up some really fantastic points and shares them in a way that's logical and also structured, but flexible. Do you see what I did there?
Yes.
So I'm pulling up Serena's. I should be a comedian, maybe not. No. Only the two of you would laugh.
Oh my gosh.
Your jokes. So we're going to go ahead and pick out Serena's picks. So biological factors, she chose that as a category as well. Too little sleep raises your blood glucose, and then activity factors, and you're chosen to highlight the lowering or increasing effects of high intensity to moderate intensity exercise. So tell us why you picked those.
Okay, so earlier in the show a little bit, I know I mentioned a lot of times I don't get enough sleep. And that one I figured out early on, because for some reason, when your mind's going 100 miles a minute and then you try to go take a bath, relax, lay down. Then when you lay down, that's when everything just starts coming across the brain. And it's like, oh, now I can't sleep because now I feel like I need to go take care of this before the morning hits. And, it's just so many things going on in the mind and sleep. And that's one thing I'm still trying to learn, how to relax enough to go to sleep, because I'm still dealing with that now. Now with the high intensity exercise, okay, so y'all know it took me a while to even get to doing high intensity because of my eyes. So every time I tried before, blood vessels will start bursting in my eyes because of the diabetic retinopathy. So I finally got to the point where I could do high intensity exercise without that happening. Yay!
Yay.
But my thing was, I would check my blood sugar before I would start, and if my blood sugar would be okay. But then when I would check it after I finish, sometimes it would be just raised a little bit. And when I actually did it over and over again, I do research on myself. I did it over and over again just to see, well, what am I doing different? I noticed that when I would have a small snack before I exercise, my blood sugar would go down. But when I did not have a snack at all, it would go up. And so even when I was looking over those factors that you gave us, Joy, and I read the explanation, I guess with adrenaline does something with your good. It needs the the glucose goes up. You need the glucose and everything. I'm gonna let you explain that because I'm not expert on that. But I did notice that when I ate a snack before exercise, it was better than not eating a snack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one of the things that can happen, and here in the comments it shows you, is that high intensity exercise can sometimes raise blood glucose because you have an adrenaline response. So it's kind of like our fight or flight choices in our body physiologically. So think about it sort of logically. If you had to, our ancestors way back in the day had to run away from an animal and flee. Well, the muscles need glucose in order to continue to move. So if you needed to keep running, you needed to release glucose. And so that's part of what happens when you have a high intensity exercise and you really get kind of like worked up. A lower intensity exercise, sort of like walking, is going to use the glucose that you have in your bloodstream. And that's how that lowers blood glucose, because you're just kind of like leisurely walking. You're not doing, like HIIT training or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and each person has to understand how their response, because it also depends on how well trained you are, and how much lean body mass you have, all of those kinds of things too. So like you said, it's important to get data about yourself, but don't be surprised if you do HIIT training, and you may need to like extend your do a temporary basal following a high intensity exercise, or give yourself a dose of a basal insulin after you exercise. So just talk to your clinician about that, because, you know, like we said in the beginning, not medical treatment, does not replace medical treatment, very personalized.
Right.
But those are just some things to consider, especially if you think, well, I'm doing something wrong, when you're very much doing something right. We don't want you to stop working out or stop exercising because you can't see, you know, see a path to well-maintained glucose values when you do a HIIT training. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to share my screen here, because this is a site that that I oftentimes send my patients to when they're saying that they're having a little bit of trouble with sleep. Of course, have the discussion with your doctor. It could be something physiological, something that can be treated. But there are some steps where if you go to sleep.org, and the content was created by the National Sleep Foundation. So let me see how I can do this. There you go. And if you see here, there are some tips. This one's titled, "Don't Let Tossing and Turning Rob You of the Shut-Eye You Need." And so it goes through some tips. So setting a routine is very important. Scheduling your caffeine. Caffeine is one of those things that increases adrenaline as well. And you really have to stop having caffeine pretty close to bedtime if you want to achieve bedtime. Power down, so the bright light of the daytime or electronic screens. I always harp on my patients not to fall asleep with their television on, because you're not fully sleeping. You're processing the noises and the lights that are coming through. This can kind of speak to what you and Reva had already talked about, writing out your worries or coloring or doing something that stimulates another one of your senses. Practice relaxation. This one talks about pressing your thumb to the top of your nose. Get up, leave the space, and then come back to it, and see and talk to your physician. So those are just some steps.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think, Serena?
Well, I don't do caffeine anymore anyway. I'm one of those people that I could drink caffeine and still fall asleep. So I just like, oh, it's pointless. I just don't use it. Yeah. But I didn't know that is that why they tell us to kind of cut down on the levels of caffeine, because it kind of sparks adrenaline and keeps you going, and then there's the blood sugar level. Okay.
And it also can be timing. So some people may not be able, they're more insulin resistant in the morning. So, and this isn't for all of my patients, but sometimes they find that in the morning they're more insulin resistant. And so they don't have coffee right at waking up, but maybe a little bit closer to the lunch hour is when they have their coffee. So just timing can be important. But yeah, that's one of the reasons. And I actually, this week, I had a patient who had elevated fasting blood glucose, and we couldn't quite figure out what it was. And then she realized that it was the caffeine that she was taking in. And so she decreased it and yelled at me that she hates decaf or tea, or, you know, like chamomile tea or something like that. She tells me the nicest things. But she was like, but my blood sugar was 109. That was just the coffee. So she like loves to hate what I tell her. Yeah. So, but I think that they're really fantastic factors to consider for each person, because so many times we harp on ourselves and on, on our patients that there are choices, or we can, find ourselves saying, well, what is it that you ate? Or, did you take your medication? And sometimes it's not that at all.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And yeah, and that's one of the main reasons for communication, for open communication, for advocating for yourself and saying, she did say, I told her, let's dig a little bit deeper. You're drinking your water, you're exercising, you're taking your medication, you're doing all the things, you're sleeping. What else is it that we might be missing? And then, it popped up in her.
I do think from that previous slide and you hearing you talk about it, like when your patients fall asleep with the TV on or, just the light from your phone, I am notorious for doing that. And then if I take like 3 days of consistent structure of placing my phone face down on the dresser instead of my nightstand, so I'm not tempted to reach for it, my sleep is 10 times better.
Yeah. I do a game with my patients, when we were in clinic, and I have them tell me when the light is off and on in the office. Okay, so first of all, everyone is safe, sitting down. There's nobody running around in a dark office. So I just want to
Disclaimer.
out there. I'm considering safety. They sit down and I just turn the light on and off, right? So just a quick click of the light to like off. And I'm like, can you see that? With their eyes closed. And they're like, oh, I can totally tell when it's on and off. And I was like, that's your brain processing. So you're not fully sleeping.
Okay.
So it's really important to not let because, and some people will remember things from shows that have been on while they've been sleeping.
I do that. Yeah.
I sometimes wondered if it would have been useful in college just to have like my textbook read to me while I slept. While I slept.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now I want to move over to, since we've had such a great conversation, thank you guys so much for sharing. I want to move over to kind of a synopsis of everything. So remembering that diabetes is not a straight line, that you want to personalize it and manage your expectations. This is something that we've been talking about throughout the series. And then having today, maybe like some tips that I pulled out of what you all shared today. And it's not an all exhaustive list. It is not the full spectrum of what it takes to own your goals and to drive your success. But Reva, can you pick out the two that were yours?
Self-awareness and self-advocacy.
Okay, perfect. So finding your own motivation, embracing what's important to you, building your support team, and then finding your voice and using it. Serena's overlapped, of course, with self-advocacy because the both of you are fantastic advocates. And I chose adaptability for Serena and also authenticity. So Serena spoke about how she's very open and honest with her team in all of the spaces of self-awareness, advocacy, flexible, I want to be structured today, and that she expects the same. She holds her clinicians and her support team to high standards, and that includes her family and friends. And then she partners with her team. She balances her flexibility and structure. And then both of you embrace the imperfect. I think, Reva, what you said in our very first episode of this series, that perhaps perfection is imperfection. It's like, I'm going to make it like one of those wall decals and just have it in my office permanently.
I'll just get it for you. Put my Reva spin on it.
I will love it if you do that for me. So is there anything else that you both would like to share today? Or just parting words?
I would just say, it's important for us as patients, just like we're holding the healthcare professionals responsible for our healthcare because we go to them and, there's insurance and everything, but we should also hold ourselves accountable to our own health because it's our bodies. Nobody can, they can tell us what to do, but we have to do it, and we have to make a way for ourselves to do it, so that that squiggly line thing, this is what it is. This is what I tell all our it's this, and it goes back and forth and back and forth, but you'll get there, but you do have to work on it yourself.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of Serena, you're your own doctor. Everyone else is just a facilitator and a support system. You know your body best. You know what works best for you. So speak up about that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing to end on because next week on Saturday, January 30th, we will actually feature physicians reacting to you all, reacting to certified diabetes care and education specialists, reacting to you from the very first series. So we'll be able to ask the physicians what they think about this entire series and hear it from them. So thank you both again for being here to share. As always, and you know this, I tell you probably weekly, that I'm always appreciative of the work that you do for yourselves and for your communities and the impact that you make and how you inspire us as clinicians to be better. So thank you both so much for being here. For our viewers, we have a quick survey on YouTube and Facebook where we would like to get your feedback on the program as well as recommendations for future episodes. Please make My Diabetes Live better by filling out this survey. And remember that the recommendations for care must be personalized. Seek the advice of your medical professionals. It's been a great start to our Saturday morning with Reva and Serena, our fantastic guest speakers. And to our viewers, we hope that this conversation has encouraged you to consider how to shape your clinical team relationships and to own your own care plan. Thank you for being a part of the My Diabetes HQ family. See you next time.